panel, a panel on the Observatory on the Protection of Taxpayer Rights, which is an initiative of IBFD, and it's really an honor to have them give their presentation at this conference. And I think that along with Julian Kokat's project with ILA, we have a very good marriage, triumvirate, really, not, of initiatives going on in the world globally on taxpayer rights. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Philip Baker, who will speak first.
All right. Goedemorgen, everybody. I think that's right, actually. I just pretend to speak German as if I've got a very heavy cold, and that sounds like Dutch. Let me run through what we're going to do in the first half an hour this morning. For those of you who made it here at the beginning, we're going to introduce the Observatory on the Protection of Taxpayers' Rights. I'll talk a little bit about the background, and then I'll pass over to Pasquale, who will explain the Supervisory Council, the relations with the other two pillars. We'll explain what those pillars are. They're not the pillars that are holding up the roof here. He'll talk about the working standards, and he'll introduce the general report, which has just been put on the website. And then we're going to pick out two of the recent developments that have been highlighted in the general report. I'm going to talk about the Finnish case, and then Pasquale is going to talk about cases on Audi Alteram Partem there. So that's the outline for today. So by way of background to the observatory, we all know the significance of human rights and taxation, the importance of freedom, dignity as a basis for taxing power. That was reflected, that thinking, in the 2015 report of the International Fiscal Association for Basel, where Pasquale and I prepared a general report based upon 41 branch reports. And in that, we identified minimum standards and best practice for the effective protection of taxpayers' rights. The observatory is a development from that 2015 report. In the report, we identified 12 areas of the interrelationship between tax authorities and taxpayers, and under those 12 areas, we identified good governance, best practice, and minimum standards. So the idea of the observatory is to update and continue the work that was carried out by the branch reporters and in the general report for IFA. So it's an impartial academic element of research carried out under the auspices of the IBFD, intending to track the extent to which governments adopt or raise the minimum standards and how the best practices become better over time. A key element is that it is completely non-judgmental. We are not judging any governments insofar as they are dealing with taxpayers. We are not an active NGO. We're not taking up taxpayers' rights on their behalf. We are simply academically recording information relating to the maintenance of the minimum standards. So the goal is the creation of a database on measures for the practical protection of taxpayers' rights. It's an awareness-raising action to show the linkage between human rights and taxation, and it will be reflected by the publication of annual reports and the maintenance of a free web-based database where anyone can go to that database in order to identify the latest developments around the world on the practical protection of taxpayers' rights. So with that explanation, let me pass over to Pasquale.
Thanks very much, Philip, and good morning to you all. This is for us a very important day. We have been working over the past years in silence and collecting information after we developed the standards, what we consider to be standards for the protection of taxpayers' rights for the Basel Conference of the International Fiscal Association, collecting information with the support of a high number of persons from around the world. As Philip indicated, our goal is to come up with a platform which can be a benchmark, can be a source of information for the protection of taxpayers' rights from around the world. We think that the debate, the international debate on the protection of taxpayers' rights is missing such global momentum, and we think that making documents available or making information available on this can be a good way to prompt the international community to take into account that you cannot make compromises on the protection of taxpayers' rights. As Philip indicated, we are not a watchdog, we are not an international organization trying to campaign for the protection of taxpayers' rights, but the idea is that we want everybody to be in a position in which they can report information on different countries and see whether some of the problems that a country has have been solved by another country. This is where we have come up with the idea of good practices or best practices. For the purpose of doing our job, we think that we really need to have what we call a Supervisory Council. The Supervisory Council should be in a position to check whether we are indeed practicing what we preach. So in other words, whether we are staying away from making a judgmental analysis of the developments around the world. We're not asking our Supervisory Council to check whether something happening in Turkey or in Venezuela is going in one direction or the other. We just want to make sure that we are in fact acting in line with what we say, and also that we provide high quality information. So the idea is that we have invited, and they have accepted, some very distinguished scholars from different parts of the world, and also some persons from the judiciary and the also the tax authorities and ombudsman. We have asked them just to monitor on an annual basis whether we are acting in line with the object and purpose of the observatory. And of course, we are delighted if they can give us their commentaries on the documents that we have produced. Sometimes, maybe those documents are not clear enough, and perhaps this is something which could be, important to enhance the quality of what we do, and also to give us their advice on the long-term goals to be pursued. This slide has the names and pictures of the persons that we have invited, and they have kindly accepted. Juliane Kokot is here. Robert Attard is not here. Dennis Davis is not here. Boris Kaka is here. And they have been so kind to accept our invitation. We have invited them also because of their astonishing recognition in the international community, and also because we think that they can help us in doing better what we want to do. Philip, I'm just wondering whether we should need also some persons from other parts of the world. Do you think that there is enough geographical representation in this Supervisory Council?
Well, it's really quite strong on Europe, and I think we possibly need somebody from North America. Canada would be good. Oh, no, maybe not.
No, come on, Canada, no.
Maybe somebody from the US.
How about this?
Yes! What an excellent idea.
Sorry, we just wanted to, it's our early morning, so we thought about this little piece of theater, but just to say that we are delighted that also Nina Olsson has accepted our invitation, and I think we can say that she has indeed accepted also on a formal basis, so we are delighted that Nina has also accepted this responsibility. And as I said, Philip and I and all the people who are working with us are happy to take their guidance and information and advice on how we can best do our work. I would like to say that before giving you some information on, more detailed information on the observatory, I think that Philip and I would like to take this opportunity also to warmly thank all the big group of people working with us. We have some of the persons who have presented national reports here. I think I have seen at least 2 of them here in this room today. All their input is particularly important for us to come up with a non-biased technical information. But I would also like to say that our technical staff at IBFD has done a tremendous job to support us, and they are all here. I would like to mention 4 of them, and those persons are Betty Andrade, Carlos Huefe, Caterina Perru, and Christian San Felipe Maestre, and I would really like to have an applause for them, because if we're doing something today, it's thanks to them and all the national reporters. So let me give you an idea now about, Philip mentioned the relation with the other 2 pillars. So the observatory is pretty much about fact-finding, what's happening around the world. In respect of the 12 points of the standards that we have developed in 2015. So it's recording what is happening around the world. So it's, as we said, a non-judgmental analysis of factual developments concerning the protection of taxpayers' rights along the standards and the categories that we have identified in 2015. And as I said, we just want to make this available. In a few minutes, we'll be showing you how. We want to make this available free of charge so that anyone who sees that there is a problem in one country can see how other countries have reported that. So the structure is just allowing you to, the structure of our project is allowing you to get more information on that. But this project is also connected with other projects. And Philip has, Nina actually has already mentioned the link with the International Law Association Study Group. That is a study group. As you know, the International Law Association was founded in the 19th century for promoting the culture of international taxation. That is important. International law, sorry, I'm just thinking about taxation all the time. Yeah, okay.
It's always on our minds.
And it is always on our mind. And the idea is that if international tax law is part of international law and public international law, it is also important to receive input from outside of the international tax law community to discuss issues of public international law, not among tax people, but also with the persons who are researching in that area. This has been possible, I would like to say, through the involvement of Juliane Kokot, who has supported the introduction of a study group in the International Law Association on the protection of taxpayers' rights. And for those of you who may be interested, there is a conference in Sydney taking place in August 2018, which is the place where we'll be addressing some of the issues on which we are researching upon. The second initiative is should be pretty much familiar to you, is the annual International Conference on Taxpayers' Rights that Nina has organized for 3 years and will organize for many more years. As you know, 23rd, 24th of May 2019. That is the conference for next year in Minneapolis. The idea is that from now on, every year we'll be disclosing the annual report of the Observatory on the practical protection of taxpayers' rights on the occasion of this conference. So we work throughout the year, we include information January to December, then we analyze it, and then we present it every year. So every year, if you go to the conference that Nina organizes, you will get the latest developments and the analysis of those issues. I think that if you had a look at the slides which are available on the website of the conference, a protected website of the conference, you can see that also our presentation includes a second part, which we're not going to present here, with some very detailed analysis with the summary of the findings of the 2015-2017 general report. Now, there are also, as in this room, there are more than 2 pillars. We have additional pillars, And those is just to show that our project is open to interaction with other projects. One of them is a purely academic project, and it is the object of the 2019 conference of the European Association of Tax Law Professors. The European Association of Tax Law Professors is not just a matter for Europeans. We have several members from the rest of the world. It is just for academics, so it is just an academic project, which doesn't mean that non-academics are not allowed to participate to the conference, but that the analysis is of a mainly theoretical nature. And this is also, we think that not only it is important to establish a link with the public international lawyers, but we also want to establish a solid link with the tax law academics. The conference will be held in Madrid on the 7th of June 2019, and that will be the occasion also to receive additional feedback for our activity. As you see, there are 3 dots below that, and this is to say that we are open to any additional project that could be potentially enriching what we do, because our goal and our ambition is that the observatory can become a sort of a forum to have information and relevant developments from around the world. Let me tell you now something more about the working standards and procedure of the observatory. We have been interacting with country reporters. The country reporters are, maybe more than one from a country, because we have essentially categorized the reporters in 3 groups. One is what we call a neutral category, and this neutral category includes full-time academics, judges, and what we generally call ombudsman or ombudspersons. And then we have also the possibility for people who have an interest, or maybe they are pursuing a specific mission, which is to protect taxpayers or to stand for the interest of tax authorities. But we also found it important to include information coming from the parties, because sometimes it is important to see what problems exist, or why something has happened, or how this fits into the overall framework. So we collect information, our staff sends questionnaires, and then our staff analyzes with us the legislation and case law, and then we decide what we want to include in the report. In principle, we include all the information that is coming in. We just want to make some checks, and this is what we do in the first part of the year. So, and then we come up with a periodical report, which can also include input for proposals and handbooks and other instruments for improving the protection of the fundamental rights. Our targets, as you can see from the slide, is to create a comprehensive database for the minimum standards of the protection of taxpayers' rights, to work on the best practices and see how they can work also in other parts of the world from the ones in which they have been developed. The idea is that we promote in this way a culture of transparency of the relations between taxpayers and tax authorities, just like the theme of this year's conference, bringing good governance and legal remedies together in a framework where everybody knows why something has happened, what issues arise, and how can solutions be found to problems. So this is what Philip and I call a constructive dialogue between taxpayers and tax authority. The research object is pretty much connected with the standards that we have set, and it's not something carved in stone, what we set in 2015 with the 12 fundamental taxpayers' rights, or the rights in those areas that we have addressed in the IFA general report. But the idea is that that was the moment in which we made our analysis of what would be appropriate and what is perhaps working better than what happens in other parts of the world. The observatory, as we said, is non-judgmental. So it's just the source of reliable information on the developments. What we are presenting here is related to a time frame that goes from January 2015 to December 2017. We wanted to collect more information for the launch, and as you can see, we have limited the number of reporting countries to 25. Now, some of you who are looking at it may be that they may have noticed that under the Americas, we have eventually decided not to include the United States. It's nothing against the United States, it's that we felt that time was not mature enough and the information that we had collected was not yet suitable for release, but we would be really happy if next year in Minneapolis we can announce that the US is among the countries that have joined the group of reported jurisdictions. So we are sure that there will be some volunteers also in this room, or if you know somebody that could contribute to that, Philip and I would be delighted to include the US among the countries which will be reported next year. So 25 countries from different parts of the world have been sent these questionnaires. These questionnaires are sometimes complex, but we want to be as precise as possible. As you can see, we have collected information concerning the developments on the level of compliance of a particular minimum standard of best practice, and then we have asked to summarize this information, and we have made our own assessment of those facts, and this is presented in the summary of the report, which was released this morning, and which we are now going to have a look at in a few minutes. I would like to say that it's important also that the observatory is open to everybody. So if you think that there are some relevant topics to be addressed in the future, we want to be a glass house. We want to be open to also transparent in what we do, but we want to be open to all the relevant information that you can provide. Before going to some specific issues that we want to address with Philip, we just want to give you a feeling of two topics. Philip has already mentioned them, and in particular, those two issues, as Philip has indicated, are related to the Satakunnan markkinapossi case and the Audi Alteram Partem case with developments from around the world. I would like to show you how you can do if you want to find information about the observatory. So you go to the IBFD webpage, ibfd.org, and then, now there is information also in the top banner in those days, but then you go to academic, which is the third column, and you go and click on Observatory on the Protection of Taxpayers' Rights. And as you can see, in the left column, you have the possibility to download the reports. This is the page which explains what we do. So there is a summary, the contents, the benefits, and the persons who are contributing to that, and the person that you can contact, actually, if you have some information that you want to send. If you click on this, then there will be another page opening, and as you can see, this page is with the national reports for the Observatory for the Protection of Taxpayers' Rights. It starts with the general report, and of course, you can click. You can do it right now if you want. We just want to be, to show you how you can do this, and then you see that there is a very detailed report which is structured along the lines of our work, and then you can see that there are specific sections on what the observatory does. Then there is a specific section on the Court of Justice of the European Union, which contains a summary of those information. But then we go on the specific points, topic by topic. The topics are the ones that we have identified in the general report of the IFA conference. So the 12 categories are the starting point for the collection of information, and you can just go on that, and then you will see that there will be information concerning the specific points. Here, I want to just go to something which comes right at the end of the summary. It's a 106 pages document. It is, in a way, a summary. There is an executive summary within the summary, but it just to show you also that we have appendices. And the appendices include, with a color code, the developments in the countries connected with the country and connected with the categories that we have developed for the 2015 Basel report of the International Fiscal Association. So I'm sure that it will be fun for you, and it will be also an opportunity to check what we're doing and how we are doing it. I think it's important for us to get back to the points sorry, I think I am, in fact, I didn't click.
Presentation number 2. Let's go back here.
It's presentation number 2.
Yes.
Thank you. As you can see, Carlos Wefe is not just helping us with all the work that he does for the observatory together with Betty, Caterina, and Chris, but it's also helping Pasquale to find a solution to the problems in handling 2 sets of slides. So let me get back to the points where we were, and then I hand over to Philip, who is presenting some issues on the Satakunnan Merkkinä-Possi case. Please, Philip.
Okay, well, we can't, in the time available, go through the whole of the general report. Pasquale has explained to you how, if you want to download the report, you can do so. If you look at the slides for this session, we're only going to go through another 1 or 2 slides, but the remainder of the pack contained a summary of the report. We were just going to highlight very, very quickly 2 of the developments in the last couple of years that are mentioned in the general report and which are not, we think, otherwise being touched on in this conference. One of the developments is just under a year old. It's the decision of the European Court of Human Rights in the Satakunnan case. Just very briefly to outline that, it's covered in the general report at paragraph 4.3.5. So you can look at a more detailed analysis there. Satakunnan is a case from Finland. Finland is one of those countries in Europe where basic tax data about individuals is in the public domain. You can go and search on a public register and you can find out how much tax an individual paid in the previous year. It's true of a couple of other countries. Norway, I think Sweden has the similar arrangement. Satakunnan, it's 2 companies involved here, and for a number of years, they had a rather enterprising activity where they took that public data and they published it originally in a form of a newspaper. So you could find out by buying that newspaper how much tax your wife had paid in the previous year, but also how much tax your neighbors had paid or other people in the community. They developed that also into, I think, a website and into an SMS service where you could text the name of a taxpayer and they would send back the details of how much tax that individual had paid. Well, at that point, the data protection supervisor in Finland stepped in and said, this is in breach of the data privacy of the individuals whose tax data was being used. The response from the companies were, this is publicly available data. It's in the public domain. How can we be processing that data? And in any event, we are journalists. We are making this information available for public debate. Well, there have been a couple of cases that have arisen out of this action from the data protection supervisor. The case went to the European Court of Justice on the application of the data protection directive, which we spoke about yesterday, to this activity. And yes, the processing of publicly available data is nevertheless covered by data protection legislation. So even though it's in the public domain, you still have to handle that data having regard to the privacy of the individuals concerned. The case went back to Finland. The Data Protection Board ordered the paper to stop publishing, and the case eventually ends up in the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg just under a year ago. And the case is very interesting because it raises the balance between, in a sense, two protected rights. The right to privacy of the taxpayers, and on the other hand, the freedom of expression, particularly the freedom of journalists. Now, I'm not going to tell you what the court decided, because I'm going to leave it to you to go and read the report and its analysis. But if you look at the report, you will realize that there are very interesting implications from this, from the use of other data, some of which is obtained by leaks, like the Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers and the Appleby Papers, and some of which will become available through public registers. How far can that information be used for journalistic purposes, and how far is it simply a matter of satisfying a public interest in knowing about other people's personal affairs? So I leave that to you to read from the general report. Back over to you, Pasquale.
Thank you, Philip. And I think, it's important to stress that even if we are reporting here on something which has happened in Europe, this information at the time of global relevance of all these matters is not just interesting for Europeans. So the point of the observatory is that we open up the world to the other parts of the world in a way that is possibly regarded as reliable and non-judgmental. And this is also something which, in our view, should be mentioned in the case of the audi alteram partem principle, so the right of being heard. So if you look at what has been reported on Italy and Spain, you see two completely different conclusions, which are connected with whether this right of being heard exists in the review phase. So when tax authorities review what they have done, so in what we call the administrative part of tax procedures. On the one hand, Spain shows a stronger inclination to protection also during this phase, as you can see from the reference to the Tribunal Economico Amministrativo Central of the 4th of April 2017. And on the other hand, Italy shows that there is no general validity of this principle in administrative tax procedures. So yes, you can get protection later on when you go to court. Later on means that meanwhile, measures taken by tax authorities can be enforced. So you get an effective legal remedy at the time in which your personal sphere has already been adversely affected. We have also thought it would be interesting to report that in Mexico there have been developments concerning the assessment based on information already available, the pre-decision, clashing with the right of being heard, which has brought to some constructive change, a legislative change. And in Turkey, there has been an amendment in 2015 to the regulation on tax audits concerning advance rulings. So these are just some highlights, and of course, if you're curious to know more about what we have said and about the other developments, you can just do it with a click. As we have tried to do before, you do and you see what has been reported, and you can just also not just check the summary, but then you can go on the national reports and the persons that have reported this information. This is the part that you find in your slides, and we will not go through this, but it could perhaps also be helpful for scanning through all the information that you see in the package. For the time being, I think it's time to close this part and to thank you for your attention.